Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah for joining us. I see we are battling for some reason or the other. I'm not too sure whether it's got to do with service delivery or you are just battling because we are talking about service delivery this morning, Imtiaz.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm not too sure where we are in the conversation. I just got in, so maybe you can lead me.
Yes, well, the thing is, we are talking about the lack of service delivery. We're talking about ratepayers getting involved. And I just cited the one example. We in the rainy season. Yesterday, I had to go to Velcom in the Free State, and just entering Velcom was a disaster. I promise you, it's called dodging the potholes, and that is just one aspect. And I'm sure there's almost every second town in the country that is sitting with exactly the same problem. Potholes is just one example of service delivery, the lack of service delivery. And as I mentioned, we just had the municipal elections where we've seen all sorts of promises come through from various candidates, councillors that were appointed. But I don't know, Imtiaz, are we making progress? Are we going backwards?
If we're talking about it from the political climate, well, what we need to understand in the political climate, first and foremost, we've just been through elections in November, right? And everyone needs to find their feet in terms of where they are and which committees and how they're sitting and all of that. And that's only going to really come to fruition by March this year, I would say, in my estimation. However, in the interim, and what we've done in eThewini is that we've insisted that direct lines of communication with the HODs be given to small parties like ourselves. That's number one. And I think where we lacking as community, or I shouldn't say lacking. Let me rephrase that. I'd say where we need to step in is in oversight. As much as we can point fingers and say it's this one's job and that one's job, but right now it's not the time to do that. It's the time for us to step up and say we want things done and how do we get it done. So we basically saying that as much as we can blame it on the ANC, we can blame it on the DA, we can blame it on councillors, we can blame it on lack of understanding, we can blame it on departments, we can blame it on corruption. What we're calling for as ACC and as eThewini Secure, which we've been doing for a while, is to say that every single area needs to start becoming active in their own areas. As much as we'd love to believe that the city has it all under control and they've got oversight people coming in and inspecting these areas and giving back reports to the city and telling them where things need to happen, and there's nights that are there's people of municipality going around to check in which lights are not working and that kind of thing. That's not happening. So what we're calling for is actually ratepayer associations to be formed and formed within voting districts. Let us be clear about that. So we're saying as ACC, you should be forming a ratepayer association, get your civic bodies going, and understand the difference. Why are we calling for ratepayers? It's a very simple thing for us. If we're calling for ratepayer associations, it means that we want to represent the 63% of the people that actually contribute towards the operational income of the city. Now, in so doing, we give you representation across the board. So an example of that would be if you go into an industrial area, who in fact owns those properties and do they actually have a vote there? That's the question we're asking. And therefore the importance of the ratepayer, because you might be part of a consortium or a conglomerate that owns industrial property. However, the only people that actually represent in that area are the people that probably live in the informal settlement neighboring that industrial area. And therefore they have the authority to start putting in the councillor and getting in whatever they need in terms of their expectations. But how does it affect economic development? So we're saying that cities across the country need to start recognizing ratepayers. That's number one. Ratepayers associations need to be formally structured and formally partnered with the city in those line departments. And something that really irks me when I go to some meetings, someone will tell me that they have the mayor's number, they have the head of water, they have the head of electricity. All of that's fine. But let us be realistic. Can the mayor deal with every single individual's problem? No, he cannot. So we've got to understand first and foremost that there are two climates within the city. One is the political climate and one is the service delivery climate. Now, we are saying that we need to divorce the two. If there are departments that are supposed to be delivering services, then we as community need to be able to hold them directly accountable, and the political climate needs to allow us to do that. That's something that we're fighting for. So, for example, if you go into an area like Greenwood Park per se, right, and if we formed a ratepayers association, it's obvious that the head of water doesn't deal directly with the water issues in your area. There is a senior superintendent that is in charge of that area. We want for that community and that organized structure within community, direct links to that superintendent so that they can deal with the issues one-on-one because the oversight isn't there. And that's what we're calling for.
Yes. And also, I think what is important and what you say, Imtiaz, is to formalize the structure. Because I think this is
Absolutely.
absolutely critical. Because I think, within a formal structure, it carries a lot more weight. It carries a lot more
Correct.
power. And, and this is what, people must realize. Because, often you'll hear, I've got a contact here, I've got a contact here, I'll speak to my contact. And, that seems to be a common phenomenon. But in a
Correct.
formal
Correct.
structure,
Correct.
a lot more can be achieved.
Absolutely. So what we're saying is, I mean, right now we're actually entering into a council meeting at 10 o'clock. And the discussions around ward committee is something that's very crucial, number one. Number two is, if you are not a formalized structure, then you are not recognized, and therefore you don't have oversight. We are asking for those structures to be formally put in. The guidelines should be dictated, or rather be put through council and passed in council to say that we recognize these organizations. And one step further to that, and I had a meeting last week with the leadership of the city to state that we also need to recognize neighborhood watches in the attack on service delivery. I'm saying, as you have wars on everything else, we should now have a war against the lack of service delivery in the city. And if we as the citizenry can get together and come to an understanding that it's not about petty politics within our community or about who's the councillor or who sits on the ward committee or who's heading up any organization. Many hands make for lighter work, and all of us need to be together in the understanding that it's all of us that put things together and make things happen for ourselves. So we're saying formalize things, but let us not jump the gun. I've seen a few areas when they heard me a few times speaking about ratepayers, they jumped the gun and they went and formed ratepayers associations for a particular entire area. That's not how we're proposing it works. There'll be a clear climate by which you would have an understanding that these are the areas by which you would operate. Like, for example, if you come into an area like I live right now, which is Ward 31, you would see, sorry, I think I've got a call coming in. You would see that there are 8 different voting districts. And in those voting districts, ultimately, it comes down to the issue of which councillor is there, number one. And secondly, where do they fit in terms of the councillor being there, and how now do you create a separate platform by which people get service delivery? I'm saying this is not to overstep the line of the councillor. I'm saying it's there to initiate service delivery in areas where we are lacking, and it's also there to assist the councillor in getting things done. However, these organizations shouldn't be led by the councillor, but should be put in place to hold the councillors accountable for what they are supposed to be doing in the political climate. And secondly, hold every single municipal department accountable in terms of service delivery, a clear understanding of what service delivery is, and then start moving forward from there in that trajectory without the fluff, without the noise, without someone giving us stories about why it's important to have water. All of that understanding is there. But if there is an issue, we need to quickly escalate it. We need to know who we need to speak to in that department that actually deals with the problem, instead of speaking to the political climate of where we are.
Imtiaz, I think this discussion we're going to have to continue next week because there's still one or two issues.
Absolutely.
And I think I just want to talk more in terms of community guidance, in terms of formalizing and setting up these structures, what they should be considering, what they should be doing. So I think you need to hold that thought, inshallah, for next week when we talk once again, Imtiaz. But for now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Imtiaz Syed, Chairperson of eThewini, secure with us this morning. And we're going to play out a voice note. Now, this is from Ashad Abu Salama, who is a Palestinian writer, an activist, an artist, and a journalist as well. And the UK-Israeli lobby has taken aim at her as a university lecturer. And what they've done is basically they've asked her, they've informed her that that she has been she has been suspended from teaching, and this was at the 11th hour, and this was after a smear campaign by the supporters of Israel. So what we're going to do is we're going to play out a voice. In fact, we've got a voice note. No, we don't have a voice note. We were due to talk to her this morning. Unfortunately, we couldn't get hold of her. But what we will do is we'll try and get hold of her tomorrow to try and provide us with an update as to what the situation is. And with that, I'm going to be signing off from myself and the rest of the team. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.